Chapter 63, The Bunny Girl Costume. After rewarding Mahiru, Lynn took a moment to check on Kano Yuuko and Yurikawa Hana. Take this. Hana was full of excitement, her fists wrapped in golden energy as she ruthlessly smashed a zombie's skull. She really suits this power. Lynn then shifted his gaze to Yuuko. In this zombie-infested world, her ghostly state gave her a huge advantage. The zombies couldn't see her. They couldn't even hear or feel her, so she could slaughter them without resistance. "Looks like you two are adapting quickly," Lynn commented. Hana's eyes sparkled. Boss." Then, without hesitation, she clung to Lynn's arm. "Boss, this otherworld stuff is amazing. But, She hesitated, her cheeks slightly flushed as she mumbled in a small voice, "I'm a little hungry." "Hungry?" Lynn checked her condition. She had burned through a lot of life energy. Thinking about how life energy could be replenished, he considered something. Would Shizuka's recovery potion work just by drinking it? "Ray, get a bottle of recovery potion number 15 for Hana." "Yes." Miyamoto Ray quickly brought over one of Shizuka's recovery potions. Lynn handed it to Yurikawa Hana. "Try it out." Without hesitation, her eyes lit up as she popped open the bottle and gulped it down. "This milk is amazing." Hana looked blissful. She never expected there to be such high-quality milk in the world. This was pure happiness. "This milk, Miyamoto Ray, who stood nearby, had a complicated expression. "Forget it. Let her figure it out on her own." Meanwhile, Lynn was observing her condition. Her life energy, once reduced to a tiny ember, suddenly flared back to life. Shizuka's recovery potions were definitely effective. On the other side, Kano Yuuko had also floated over after spotting Lynn, immediately hanging her body over him. She took a deep sniff, her gaze turning a little amused. So many different girls since. Her master was quite the harem protagonist. In just a short time, she had already gotten familiar with the other Familia members, and they were all beautiful girls. A small excitement stirred within her. Would Lynn do this and that with her too? The loneliness she had endured for 60 years, she could feel it bubbling up again. By evening, Yatsuya Miko and Yurikawa Hana left the apocalypse world together. Hana cheered. "Finally, I can go home with Miko again." Seeing her so happy, Miko couldn't help but smile. "Hana, how does it feel to be part of the Familia? It's so much fun." Hana was brimming with enthusiasm. "Everyone in the Familia is amazing. Boss is so cool. And the milk is delicious." "Milk?" Yatsuya Miko's smile froze. That very questionable potion. If it wasn't necessary, she'd honestly rather receive Lynn's magic replenishment directly. Just thinking about it made her heartbeat quicken a little. And then, she inevitably thought about Mahiru's reward. Her expression turned dazed. Everyone was being so bold. Not just Saeko and the others, but even Mahiru. Even Utaha senpai seemed to be preparing something. Only she was doing nothing. Other than magic replenishment, there hadn't been much real progress. The other girls in the Familia all lived under the same roof as their master. Only she still went home separately. Oh, and now, Hana had joined too. Even though she was new, Miko understood that it was only a matter of time before Hana got eaten by their master. After all, every girl in the Familia was part of their master's responsibility. After all, they were all beautiful. In a luxury apartment, Yukino lay in bed, her gaze slightly unfocused. Then, a cursed spirit crawled onto the ceiling above her. "Can you see me? Can you see me?" Yukino's expression stiffened slightly, doing her best not to show any reaction. But under the covers, her hands clenched tightly. Yeah, even at home, she was surrounded by cursed spirits. She pulled out her phone, shifting her gaze naturally to the screen. Just then, a message popped up. Yuki, I'm so scared." Yukino's fingers froze for a moment. She bit her lip, guilt welling up inside her. If it weren't for her, Yui wouldn't have ended up like this. If she had just listened back then, if she hadn't stubbornly entered the old school building, everything would have stayed normal, right? This was all her fault. and she had even dragged Yui into it. She bit her lip harder, her eyes growing misty. She was so useless. At the very least, she had to save Yui. Should she seek help from the Supernatural Research Club? Her thoughts were scattered. No, first, she would check the shrine. Maybe there was a way. If not, then she'd have no choice but to turn to the Supernatural Research Club for help. After all, out of everyone she knew, they were the only ones who could handle something like this. Apocalypse World. Kasume Gakkou Utaha sneaked into Bisujima Siko's room, looking around cautiously. Seeing that Lynn wasn't there, she let out a sigh of relief. Then, she took out the outfit she had stuffed in her bag. The exposed bunny girl costume. Her cheeks flushed. This outfit was way too much. She held it up, looking at the lower part of the design. How could it be that revealing? She took a deep breath. Screw it. Just change. Forcing down her embarrassment, she put the outfit on, and immediately she felt so exposed. She let out a small whimper before throwing herself onto the bed. Burying her upper body under the blanket, she left her lower half uncovered. The moment Lynn walked in, the first thing he would see would be a pair of beautiful, black stocking-clad legs, slightly parted, with soft curves. There was no way he could resist. Utaha felt that her strategy was perfect. At least becoming the fifth isn't that bad. Half an hour later, Lynn was about to make his usual trip to Siko's room. But on the way, he was stopped by Takagi Yuriko, who had been waiting for him. She smiled slightly, a mature charm in her expression. Lynn-sama, I have a favor to ask. Would you mind coming to Saya's room for a moment? Lynn raised an eyebrow, but followed her. The moment he entered the room, he saw Takagi Saya. Face flushed, body bare, eyes avoiding his as she fidgeted. Meanwhile, Takagi Yuriko remained calm, offering him a gentle smile as she slipped out of her clothes and gracefully knelt down. Please, Lynn-sama, this might be the only value I have left. Lynn looked at her for a moment and didn't hesitate. When someone willingly delivered themselves to his doorstep, how could he refuse? Without a word, he pulled Yuriko into his arms, pressing her against the wall. Siko's room. Kasume Gakkou Utaha, half asleep, vaguely heard some strange sounds. She had been hiding under the covers for too long and was starting to feel lightheaded from lack of oxygen. What's going on? These sounds seem familiar. Chapter 64, Devil's Contract, finally activated. The next day, morning. At breakfast, Utaha absent-mindedly poked at her food with her chopsticks. She had no appetite. With a slightly resentful gaze, she looked over at Siko, as if silently asking, "Why didn't Lynn visit your room last night?" Siko just chuckled and shrugged. Can't be helped. Wherever Master decides to go, no one can predict. She thought for a moment and added, I remember one time, Master didn't even come to the Apocalypse World. Utaha froze, recalling that moment. And then, she felt even more depressed. That night, Lynn had spent the entire time gaming with Kaneko all night long. Without her even realizing it, he had gotten that close to Kaneko. Wait, could it be that the women of the Familia were no longer enough to satisfy Lynn? Utaha's thoughts spiraled wildly, and she eventually arrived at a conclusion. She couldn't just let this continue. If she wanted to offer herself, was there even a chance he wouldn't accept? The weekend, Higurashi Shrine. Yukino Shida Yukino and Yugahama Yui stood at the base of the Torii Gate. Yuki, will this really work? Yui tried her best to resist the urge to look around nervously. It had been a few days since the incident at the old school building. After facing cursed spirits daily, they had gotten somewhat used to dealing with them. But it was still terrifying. Living in constant fear every day had drained them completely. They were so exhausted that dark circles had formed under their eyes, and they had lost all their energy. There had even been a few times they had been so scared they peed themselves. Even worse, some of the cursed spirits were so cunning, lurking in disguise, blending into the surroundings, only to reveal their twisted forms in an instant. It felt like they were just moments away from being discovered, from having their secret exposed. If this continued, how was any different from being dead? Yukino's face showed her fatigue as she bit her lip. This is the last shrine in the area. If this doesn't work, then they'd have no choice but to seek help from Lynn. Let's go. Taking the lead, Yukino stepped onto the shrine staircase. As they climbed, they kept their eyes on their surroundings, watching carefully. Yuki, I don't see any cursed spirits. Yui's voice carried a hint of excitement. Yukino's eyes also brightened slightly, hope flickering within them. Maybe this shrine could really help. After a long climb, they finally reached the top, right in front of the shrine's main hall. Hello, are you here to pray? Higurashi Kagome, dressed in a shrine maiden's outfit, held a broom in her hands as she curiously looked at the two of them. Yukino hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yes, we're here to pray. Kagome smiled. All right, follow me. Yukino and Yui exchanged a glance, then quickly followed. This shrine, the atmosphere felt strong. Maybe, just maybe, as Kagome led them around a corner, passing by a small-looking shrine. Ya-ia! A terrifying, inhuman scream erupted from beneath the shrine. Yukino and Yui instantly froze in place. What the hell? Did they just hear something weird? Yukino cautiously glanced around, but she didn't see anything unusual. Only then did she let out a breath of relief. It must have been her imagination. She had been too stressed lately, so maybe she was just hearing things. Just as she started to relax. Boom! Bang! Bang! Yukino tensed up once more, her body stiff. Aha! Kagome let out an awkward laugh as she helplessly glanced at the sealed well nearby. Lately, strange sounds had been echoing from that well, scaring away visitors. Ugh, if this continued, the shrine was going to go bankrupt. Really it's nothing, absolutely nothing, just well. Higurashi Kagome looked a bit embarrassed. She really wasn't lying. Even though strange sounds kept coming from the well, every time they opened it to check, nothing was there. And the shrine itself had never experienced anything truly supernatural. But visitors, naturally they were scared. Seeing Kagome's awkward expression, Yukino subtly glanced toward the source of the noise. It wasn't a curse, but it was still really strange. They should hurry up, complete their prayers, and leave. Not that she was sure if it would work. A while later, Yukino and Yui left Higurashi's shrine. It didn't work, huh? The two exchanged glances, falling into silence. The reason there were no curses at that shrine was probably because of that strange noise, right? Higurashi's shrine. Kagome groaned. Mom, if we don't do something about this soon, the shrine is doomed. Her mother sighed as well. Mom doesn't have a solution either. Why don't you think of something, Kagome? Monday, Shuchin Academy. 3 p.m., Supernatural Research Club. Yukino took a deep breath, bowed deeply, and said, Please, I beg you, Lynn senpai. Lynn, sitting across from her, remained indifferent. From the looks of her, she had been through a lot recently. Exorcism services outside of school start at 5 million yen. Just prepare the money. Finally, after being on hold for a long time, his exorcism business was back in action. F5 million. Yukino stiffened. 5 million yen. Her sister or mother could probably afford it, but that didn't mean she could easily get that kind of money. Should she ask her sister for help? Yukino hesitated. She didn't want to involve her family in supernatural matters because of her own problems. But it seemed she had no other choice. Please wait a moment. She stepped out of the Supernatural Research Club, biting her lip as she dialed a number. The call connected. Oh my, what a rare occasion. Yukino actually called her big sister. A lively voice came through the phone. Enne-san. On the other end, Yukino Shida Haruno's hand paused mid-action. She put aside what she was doing and narrowed her eyes slightly. Yukino, your voice sounds strange. Did something happen? Yukino went silent for a moment before finally saying, It's nothing. Can you transfer 5 million yen to me? Haruno fell silent. 5 million wasn't a big deal for her. But what did Yukino need that much money for? Something about this didn't sit right. Taking a deep breath, Haruno decided to probe a little, using a playful tone. Yukino, what do you need the money for? Don't tell me. You're keeping a boyfriend? The line went completely quiet. Haruno sighed. Yeah, figured you wouldn't answer. Fine, I'll send you the money. But, her tone sharpened slightly. I'm going to find out exactly what you used it for. Click. The call ended, leaving only the dial tone. Yukino sighed, exasperated. I knew it would turn out like this. But this was the only option left. At the very least, she couldn't let Yui suffer any longer. She couldn't do anything about the spirits roaming the streets, but at least their homes should be peaceful, right? With that thought, she put her phone away and walked back into the Supernatural Research Club. The money is ready. Lynn glanced up at her, nodded, and said, Utaha Miko, go with her. 5 million yen wasn't even worth his personal time. Besides, this was just a simple exorcism. Utaha and Miko were more than enough to handle it. Lynn had far more important matters to attend to. Finally, the devil's contract had officially taken effect again. Chapter 65, Black Bullet. Yokohama residence. Since Mrs. Yokohama wasn't home, Yui took the opportunity to invite Yukino, Utaha, and Miko inside. Kusumitsuka Utaha scanned the room, checking for any particularly troublesome spirits. Finding nothing too outrageous, she left the rest to Miko. These spirits were of no use to her at her current level anyway. Yatsuya Miko, however, had a special ability that made her exceptionally effective against spiritual entities. With just a casual stroll through the house, she poked each lingering spirit one by one. The moment she touched them, they popped like balloons, completely vanishing without a trace. Watching Miko exorcise them so effortlessly, Yukino Shida Yukino and Yokohama Yui fell silent. These spirits, which had terrified them daily, were nothing more than fragile glass ornaments in Miko's hands. This was the difference between an ordinary person and someone with supernatural abilities. A tinge of regret surfaced in Yukino's heart. A flicker of reminiscence passed through her eyes. Deep down, she felt a pang of regret. Back then, in her rush to escape from supernatural affairs, she had left without hesitation. But just as Lynn had said, there was no turning back anymore. She had even considered ways to make herself unable to see the supernatural again. But wouldn't that just be self-deception? Even if she couldn't see them, she already knew the truth. She would still be aware, still be afraid. If she had already stepped into this world, then why bother running away? She let out a slow breath, calming herself down. Quietly, she waited for Miko to finish her purification. She knew this exorcism was just a temporary fix. It didn't address the root cause at most. It would bring some temporary peace. Supernatural abilities. If she could wield them too, would things be different? Lost in thought, she stared blankly ahead. Supernatural Research Club. Lynn activated Devil's Contract, vanishing from the club. Shina Mahiru rested her chin in her palm, quietly watching the spot where Lynn had disappeared. She murmured, "May your path be ever prosperous." Tokyo area. Seitenshi, the governor of the Tokyo area, held a freshly rejected copy of the new Gastria law in her hands. Her eyes were filled with frustration. Why? The cursed children were human too. Shaking her head, she sighed and turned to the next document in her stack only to freeze in place. This is... She picked up a piece of black parchment covered in strange, indecipherable runes. Just staring at it made her feel lightheaded. Pray to the devil, sign the contract, and he shall answer you. There were no recognizable words or characters on the paper, and yet somehow she had understood it perfectly. A supernatural phenomenon. Her expression stiffened. A devil. She glanced at the new Gastria law sitting on her desk. Then, closing her eyes, she interlocked her fingers in front of her chest. If making a deal with the devil was what it took to pass the law and protect the cursed children, then so be it. Without hesitation, she signed her name on the parchment. She blew lightly on the ink, helping it dry faster, and let out a small chuckle. Will you really answer me, devil? There was a hint of anticipation in her gaze. She knew it was unlikely, but she still hoped. A powerless girl, burdened with this role she never asked for. If sacrificing herself meant she could do something good for the world, she would gladly accept that fate. This was probably just someone's prank, right? Someone must have seen how stressed she was and left it here to cheer her up. That was the only explanation, or so she thought, until the parchment in front of her suddenly burst into a radiant glow. Saitenshi's lips parted slightly, her eyes widening in shock. A deep, unfamiliar voice echoed. Are you my contractor? Thump thump. Her heartbeat instantly sped up. Her eyes went round as she felt her throat go dry. It's real. The devil actually answered. A wave of helplessness washed over her. A devil? That had to be terrifying, right? She didn't dare to breathe too loudly, her body stiff as she slowly turned her head. And then she saw him. A young man. For a moment, she blinked in confusion. Wait, a handsome devil? No. He has to be human, right? A wave of relief rushed through her. Of course, there was no such thing as devils in this world. It had to be a prank, but the effects were incredibly realistic. Where exactly did this man come from? Still dazed, she watched as Lynn casually walked up and picked up the new Gastria law from her desk. Getting this law passed, that's your request? Black bullet, huh? Lynn smirked. This world really could use a devil. After all, sometimes it takes a villain to deal with villains. And while he wasn't a villain, he was a devil. Excuse me, sir. Seitenshi hesitated, unsure how to address him. Just call me Lynn. All right, Mr. Lynn. She fumbled for a moment before finally composing herself. Taking a deep breath, she slipped back into her usual authoritative demeanor, her amethyst eyes sharpening. First question, how did you even get in here? Though her tone was firm, her hand had subtly moved closer to the emergency alarm. Lynn, unfazed by her cautious movements, simply shrugged and replied in a relaxed tone, Didn't you summon me yourself? I did. Seitenshi froze. The devil's contract. You literally just signed it. Did you already forget? Lynn gave her an exasperated look. Yeah, but wasn't that just a joke? A joke? Who told you that? Well, it's just that. Mr. Lynn, you don't exactly. She was about to say, you don't look like a devil. But before she could finish, Lynn grinned, and with a single motion, his massive, jet-black wings unfurled behind him. I am a devil. Seitenshi's mouth opened, but no words came out. Wings. This was real. Her mind went blank. She had never been in a situation like this before. No one had ever taught her how to negotiate with a devil. Her brain, usually so sharp, scrambled for a response. Meanwhile, Lynn chuckled. Seriously? She summoned a devil, and now she's acting all surprised? Without giving her time to overthink, he folded his wings back and got straight to the point. I'll take your request. Once it's done, I'll come back for what I want in return. Wait. Seitenshi blurted out, stopping him in his tracks. Her request, right? She had wished for the law to be passed. If Mr. Lin really could make that happen, then maybe this wasn't so bad. If he truly was a devil, then perhaps he had the power to accomplish it. But she needed to know, Mr. Lin, your goal is to ensure the new Gastria law is passed, correct? That's right. Then, how exactly do you plan to do it? She knew all too well that many high-ranking officials were firmly against the law. That was the main reason it kept getting blocked. What method would a devil use? Lin's lips curled into a smirk. Ow! His voice was calm, cold, simple. I'll just kill everyone who disagrees. Chapter 66. In this world, only devils are enough. K-kill. Everyone. Seitenshi's mouth hung open, her eyes blank with shock. Confirmed. That was definitely something only a devil would say. She shot up from her seat in an instant, hands trembling slightly in panic. No, absolutely not. This was bad. Had she accidentally opened some kind of Pandora's box? Her chest tightened, and for a brief moment, she wanted to cry. She had to take responsibility for this. Taking a deep breath, she bowed deeply. Please, Mr. Lin, I beg you didn't do that. All she wanted was to protect the cursed children, not go to the extreme of killing everyone who opposed the law. Lin leaned casually against her desk, his deep eyes gazing out the window. His voice, however, remained indifferent. The request is yours, but how I complete it is up to me. As he stared at the city outside, his mind was already analyzing what he could gain from this world. Right now, his Familia had two major priorities. Recruit more members. The more Familia members he had, the greater the feedback loop of power he would receive, making him even stronger. EXP resources. The experience required for his members to level up was just as critical. Strengthening them meant strengthening himself. Everything else? Not important. At least, not until he became a Maou. For now, he wasn't about to waste time on anything outside those two goals. And honestly, his Familia was still pathetically small. There was no room to focus on anything else. So his objective in this world was crystal clear. Recruit more members. After all, this world had millions of unique, special Lolas. Even if only a tiny fraction of them were reincarnated as devils, each one would provide him with a steady stream of power. Then how about millions of Lolas? Even if they started as low-class devils, their sheer numbers alone would skyrocket his power. Maou. Super Maou? Lynn's saliva production increased. His lips curled into a grin. A very disturbing grin. For the first time, Maou Leveler, even something beyond that, felt incredibly close. I will treat them well and give him a future. Even though Lynn had a suspicious smile right now, he wasn't thinking of anything illegal. After all, he wasn't in a lawless actually. He despised those who were. Millions of Familia members. With the massive resource pool of the apocalypse world, he wasn't worried about supporting them. Besides, once they were reincarnated as devils, the gastria virus inside them would be completely eradicated. They wouldn't have to live in fear of mutating into monsters. He was here to save them. A righteous devil. Yep, he was a good devil. Right now, though, his Familia was severely understaffed. With just himself and a handful of members, gathering all the cursed children wouldn't be easy. He needed a tool. A very useful tool. Lynn's gaze shifted back to Seitenshi, who was practically tied in knots with anxiety. Oh, didn't he already have the perfect tool right here? Smiling faintly, he spoke in a slow, deliberate tone. You don't want the cursed children to suffer anymore, do you? Saitenshi's breath hitched. Her light blue eyes filled with determination. Mr. Lynn, I want to protect them. They were human, too. They deserved to be protected and treated fairly. That belief had never wavered. But killing all those people would throw human society into chaos. She wasn't naive. She understood the reality of the situation. Many of the people in power were corrupt and disgusting. She despised their filth and hypocrisy. But they were still the ones governing society. If they all suddenly died, a massive power emptiness would form. Without leadership, order would collapse. And with the gastria threat looming over them, an unstable society would only crumble further. As Seitenshi, ruler of Tokyo area, she could not allow that to happen. She could only hope the devil she had summoned would understand. Anxiously, she watched him. Lynn suddenly chuckled. Human society in chaos? He tilted his head slightly. Then why not just wipe out humans altogether? Saitenshi's brain froze. If humans were gone, then of course society wouldn't fall into chaos anymore. SSSS. Wait, that actually made some sense. But why did Mr. Lin suddenly jump from one extreme to another? This wasn't right, was it? No way. Could it be that solving problems at the root was simply how devils thought? Lin didn't bother explaining. Him? A good devil? Who's the fool that believed that? He then walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing down at the world beneath him. His crimson eyes swept over the crowds marching through the streets, holding up banners that read, "We will never forgive the Gastria. Expel the cursed children. Kill them all." Their voices filled the streets as they paraded their hatred for all to see. Lin watched them for a moment, then grinned. In a quiet, almost whispering voice, he murmured, "This world really only needs devils." Ah, there it was. The devil's whisper. Only devils? Did that mean devils were about to invade the human world? Had she really opened Pandora's box? Anxiety twisted in Saitenshi's chest. But when she followed Lin's gaze and looked outside, she fell silent. Protests against the cursed children's rights. Scenes like this happened almost every single day. Even without the enhanced hearing of devil, she could tell exactly what those people were shouting. In the end, the reason the new Gastria law never passed wasn't because of politics. It was because of the cold indifference of the people. Why? Those children were the ones protecting them. The ones defending Tokyo with their lives. And yet, this was how they were treated? Seitenshi felt nothing but disappointment. And now, hearing Lynn's words, she suddenly understood. Even a devil couldn't stand to watch humanity's cruelty. Humanity was truly a failure. Lynn withdrew his gaze, turning back toward her. Sunlight streamed through the window behind him, casting his figure into shadow. Only his ruby-red eyes gleamed with an unnatural brilliance. Seitenshi saw him standing there, bathed in the light, and in that moment, a thought flashed through her mind. A devil that looks like an angel? Lynn stretched out a hand toward her, his voice light with amusement. Well, do you want to become the first devil in this world? Seitenshi stared blankly at his outstretched hand. A devil? Her? You feel it too, don't you? The weakness and powerlessness of being human. His eyes flickered with an unreadable glow, his words cutting straight into her heart, merciless and sharp. Seitenshi said nothing. You are the highest ruler of Tokyo. She remained silent. Yet you couldn't even pass a single law. You're disappointed in yourself too, aren't you? You want to change things, don't you? Huh. Seitenshi's breath hitched. Lynn's words pierced through her chest like blades, stabbing deep into the wounds she had long tried to ignore. She couldn't help but remember the cursed children beaten and humiliated on the streets. The ones forced to hide like rats in the sewers. The ones who died fighting for Tokyo, sacrificing themselves to protect the very people who despised them. And finally, she remembered that day, in a meeting hall, the moment the new Gastria law was brought forward. The endless, cold-hearted rejections. Denied, denied, denied. Her lips trembled. Softly, she murmured, if I become a devil, can I change all of this? Chapter 67. Ideal Devil. Seitenshi wanted change. She wanted to change her weak and powerless self. She wanted to change the fate of the cursed children. She wanted to change this twisted world. As she stared at Lynn's outstretched hand, an inexplicable impulse surged in her heart. But she hadn't forgotten Lynn's extreme words. Why not just wipe out humanity? A world with only devils is enough. Still, the thought of eradicating humanity was just too terrifying. A bitter feeling welled up inside her. What she truly wished for was the coexistence of humans and the cursed children. Even though the new Gastria law had been met with an overwhelming 82% disapproval from Tokyo citizens. Even though it had been collectively rejected by those in power. Even though, realistically, the chance of humans and cursed children living together in harmony was almost non-existent. Would it really have to be an all-or-nothing scenario where only one side could survive? The cursed children were human too. Her gaze grew uncertain, filled with hesitation. Seeing her expression, Lynn pressed on. Also, if you choose this path, you can cure the cursed children. Oh, then they wouldn't have to be called cursed anymore. Her eyelashes trembled. What do you mean, Mr. Lynn? Lynn smirked. The so-called Gastria virus? To devils, it's nothing worth mentioning. Her eyes widened in shock, her violet pupils filled with disbelief along with a faint glimmer of hope hidden deep within. Her voice quivered. Mr. Lynn, can you really cure them of the Gastria virus? Yes. Lynn was a devil. Maybe, just maybe, he could truly solve the problem of the Gastria virus. Seeing the look on her face, Lynn's smile deepened. Leaning close, he whispered into her ear, now that you know there's a way to save them, are you really going to just stand by and watch? Seitenshi bit her lip, clenched her fists tightly. She couldn't just stand by. She had done everything she could for the cursed children. But without exception, all of her efforts had ended in failure. She was powerless. Even as governor of the Tokyo area, she had been unable to change anything. The cursed children were still discriminated against, still oppressed. And now, a way to save them was right in front of her. There was no way she could let this opportunity slip away. Besides, this might be the only thing she could ever do for them. As long as she could save the cursed children. Seitenshi took a deep breath, bowed deeply, and pleaded, Please, Mr. Lynn, save those children. As long as you can save them, She shut her eyes, voice trembling as she forced out the final words. I'll do anything. Lynn's grin widened. As expected, She was someone willing to sacrifice herself for others. Then, let's start by making you a devil. She remained still, eyes closed, but her eyelashes trembled violently. A deal with a devil always came with a price. As the highest ruler of the Tokyo area, she had seen the filth and corruption of humanity. She knew better than anyone what this meant. Becoming a devil, then so be it. As for Lynn's idea of wiping out humanity, a sense of helplessness washed over her. She didn't want humanity to go extinct, but she also wanted to help the cursed children. The fate of humanity. She would leave that to her future self, her devil self, to decide. For now, she chose to run away from that dilemma. Cowardly? Maybe, but it was the only option she had. Lynn didn't hesitate. Take off your clothes. Her eyes shot open instantly. Her pupils trembled violently as she parted her lips slightly. Did she need to take off her clothes to become a devil? She wanted to ask, but in the end, she only let out a deep sigh. She had just said she was willing to do anything. Was she really going to hesitate now, just because she was asked to remove her clothes? She thought about the cursed children, forced to live in the sewers like rats. Slowly, with trembling hands, she pulled down her dress, leaving only her light blue underwear. She shut her eyes tightly, unable to meet Lynn's gaze. But she could feel Itha's eyes on her, making her body burn with an unfamiliar heat. Turn around and expose your back. Lynn decided not to place the devil's piece on the front of her body. With how flustered she already was, doing so might be too much of a shock. She might even pass out. As expected, when she heard Lynn's words, she let out a quiet breath of relief. Facing away from him still felt strange, but at least she didn't have to look him in the eye. Once again, she told herself, avoiding the problem may be cowardly, but it works. So, she turned her back to him. She pressed her lips together, waiting nervously for his next command. Inevitably, a few inappropriate thoughts flashed through her mind. Her eyes widened in embarrassment. A deep shade of red colored her face. Her whole body trembled as she leaned forward, pressing herself against her desk. Click! Her bra strap came undone. Wait, was he really going to? I am not ready yet. Just as her thoughts started running wild, a cold sensation touched her skin. She flinched. A quiet gasp escaped her lips. Something was entering her body. Her temperature spiked. A surge of power erupted from within. Her very body and blood were being rewritten. She almost let out a moan. Biting down on her lip, she desperately suppressed the urge. It was right above her waist. She had toehold on. Meanwhile, a notification popped up in Lynn's mind. Ding! You have obtained a new Familia member. Seitenshi. Ding! Your Familia member has reincarnated as a special devil, Ideal Devil. Ding! You have acquired the skill, Ideal Devil. Ding! Your power has increased slightly. Ideal Devil. Lynn's eyes narrowed as he looked at the flawless skin on her back. The blessing information appeared before him. Seitenshi. Rank, Low-Class Devil. Race, Devil. Master, Lynn Valifer. Stats. Strength, I0. Agility, I0. Endurance, I0. Magic, I0. Unique abilities, Ideal Devil. Ideal Devil. Peace domain. Within this field, no living being can harbor hostile intent. Devilization, Ideal Collapse Mode 3.6. Utopia. A unique barrier where time stands still in eternal harmony. A control-type ability? Lynn wasn't entirely sure how Ideal Devil worked. For now, he set it aside. After imprinting a copy of her blessing information, he patted her back and said, "It's done. The reincarnation was a success. You're officially a devil now." Still leaning against her desk, Seitenshi blinked in a daze. Just like that, she had become a devil? Her body felt so much stronger, and there was something strange inside her. Was this the power of a devil? Questions filled her mind, but then she remembered she was still half naked. Her face flushed crimson. She quickly fastened her bra strap and pulled her dress back up, adjusting it hurriedly. Once she was fully dressed again, she finally let out a breath of relief. and thin piece of paper was suddenly pushed in front of her. This is your blessing information. Take a look. She stared at it, confused. Chapter 68. Reincarnate all cursed children as devils. Lynn gave a simple explanation of the blessing system's abilities. Hearing this, Seitenshi's eyes flickered with realization. She tightly gripped the piece of paper detailing her blessing, her heart filled with complicated emotions. She had always dreamed of saving the cursed children but lacked the power to do so. The only way to achieve her goal was by making a deal with the devil. She had expected things to turn strange. After all, devils were said to be wicked, treacherous beings. She had already prepared herself to offer everything. So why? Why had things turned out like this? Upon reincarnating as a devil, she had gained immense physical strength, supernatural magic, an extended lifespan, and slowed aging. She looked at the blessing information and pressed her lips together. This was a complete and utter reward. Seitenshi remained silent, her expression torn. Did someone like her truly deserve such a thing? She was nothing more than a figurehead. At just 17, she had been pushed into her position as a mere mascot. Smack! A warm, broad hand landed on her head. Snapping out of her daze, she tilted her face slightly upward and blankly stared at Lynn. How does it feel to be a devil? Her gaze dropped, unable to meet his eyes. Softly she whispered, "It feels amazing." Her body still appeared delicate, but she could feel the explosive power hidden within her. Now that she was a devil, she could accomplish things she never could as a human. Like the cursed children after unlocking their abilities. No, even stronger than that. After all, she was only a low-class devil right now. With the blessing system, she had limitless potential for growth. But, biting her lip, she hesitated before asking in a self-conscious voice, "Lynn-san, why did you choose me?" Obviously, it was because she signed the devil's contract, and because the devil's peace had lit up for her. That's what Lynn thought to himself, but he didn't say it aloud. He could tell her mindset was a little off. On the surface, she carried herself as a noble, calm, and composed ruler. But deep down, she was just a sensitive, insecure girl. At the end of the day, despite holding the highest authority in the Tokyo area, she was still just a student. "Do I really deserve to follow you?" Her voice was filled with uncertainty. "Don't overthink it." Lynn ruffled her hair with a chuckle. "It's not up to you to decide whether you're worthy, it's up to me." Well, technically, it was up to the devil's peace. And since the peace had recognized her, "Without a doubt, you're exactly the kind of talent I need." She stared at him, dumbfounded. His warm smile shattered the haze of self-doubt in her heart. Lynn pinched her cheek lightly and continued, "Besides, your status is pretty useful in this world. Gathering the cursed children would take far longer without her help. Right now, his Familia didn't have enough manpower." Hearing Lynn's words, her gaze turned serious. "Please, give me any command, Lynn-san." Now that she was allowed to follow him, she would prove her worth. She refused to be just a pretty face. Lynn, still pinching her cheek, smirked. "No rush. First, take some time to test your own abilities." It was only then that Seitenshi noticed Lynn was still pinching her cheek. She pursed her lips slightly, but didn't resist. Compared to the blessing Lynn had granted her, a little face pinching was nothing. Still, it was the first time a boy had touched her like this, and she couldn't help but feel a little shy. Forcing herself to focus, she turned her attention back to the blessing information in her hand. Following Lynn's suggestion, she ignored her base stats, which were all currently at I0. However, her gaze lingered on the section labeled Master for a moment. Master, a strange feeling stirred within her. Her heartbeat quickened, and she hastily shifted her eyes to the unique abilities section at the bottom. Ideal Devil. A complicated look crossed her face. That name, it gave her a strange, indescribable feeling. Was it mocking her for being an idealist? Peace Domain and Utopia. Those were the exact societal structures she had once strived for. Yet, she had never been able to make them a reality. In fact, she hadn't even taken the first step. These abilities suit me perfectly. She had always been a peace lover, never one for conflict. A true pacifist. Seeing that she had finished reading her status, Lynn leaned back in her office chair and casually flipped through the documents on her desk. Among them were policies like the new Gastria law, the new Humanity Project, Special Forces reports, and cursed children welfare plans. He glanced through them, but couldn't make sense of any of it. After skimming briefly, he gave up, even though he had watched Black Bullet before. This was now a real, living world. Many of its social structures were different from the ones in his original world. Thinking about it, he decided not to come up with a strategy himself. He had someone far more familiar with this world right in front of him. Why waste brain cells? Tapping his finger rhythmically against the desk, he spoke up. I plan to reincarnate all of the cursed children as devils. Once they become devils, the Gastria virus in their bodies will be completely neutralized. And in the process, I gain more Familia members. Familia? What does it mean? The newly reborn devil, Seitenshi, tilted her head in confusion. She knew that, after signing the contract, she now completely belonged to Lynn. But she wasn't familiar with the concept of Familia. Lynn patiently explained it to her. Oh, I see. She finally understood. Basically, they were servants who followed and served Lynn. She had no objections. After all, becoming Lynn's subordinate had already granted her great power and potential. More importantly, he had promised to save the cursed children. As for the cursed children themselves, she was sure they would be overjoyed. Even if they weren't granted power, just being accepted by someone would be enough to make them happy. And now on top of that, they would even regain normal bodies. To the cursed children, Lynn was nothing short of a miracle. Lynn-san, what do I need to do? Her expression was serious and determined. Find all the cursed children and gather them together. Once they're ready, I'll reincarnate them one by one. That was his order. Seitenshi took a deep breath. Her blue eyes shone with unwavering resolve. Understood.